During the peak of the pandemic, I made a connection. One of the patients, he was not doing well. So this one day, I walked into his room, in my usual bubbly self. Hey, he put his head down. And he said, Pauline, I don't have good news for you. And he said, I thought I was doing better, but the doctors just told me this morning, I've been on Optiflow for so long. It's time.
On January 15th, 2021, I was admitted to LVHN with COVID. On my second day in the hospital, Pauline was assigned to be my nurse. Our first meeting was during one of those moments when I was so overwhelmed with fear, and my eyes were tearing. Pauline intuitively recognized my distress. I do believe God intervened and chose Pauline to be my nurse that day. You are blessed to have Pauline on your staff, as she portrays the epitome of what an LVHN nurse should strive to emulate.
I'm sorry. So every time I listen to that, or every time I read that letter, it's very emotional. I'm glad I met that patient, and I'm also glad that I was one of the reasons why he kept faith, and he kept, he stayed strong.
And this afternoon, we're announcing new guidelines for every American to follow over the next 15 days. As we combat the virus, each and every one of us has a critical role to play.
Okay. I'm Andrea Kushner. I work for Lehigh Valley Health Network. I am a registered nurse.
Matt Feller with Lehigh Valley Hospital Medevac as a flight nurse.
My name is Nicole Persing, Nursing Director and Patient Care Services for LVHN.
Hello, guys. My name is Pauline Ayompe. I've been with LVHN for 4+ years, almost 5. Most people, when they think of a nurse, they think of someone in scrubs passing out meds. But there is more to nursing than that.
A nurse is someone to help take care of people that aren't able to take care of themselves.
And just putting everything about yourself aside. Like, you may be hungry, you may be thirsty, you may have to go to the bathroom, but you put all of that aside.
We do everything for the patient as a nurse. It's not just the medical aspect of it. It's the emotional part of it, the physical part of it, the mental component of it.
And then there's, the part that isn't seen, which is the things that are buried, that aren't talked about. The knowing that this is what I do, and I understand that it's not always going to be pleasant.
Pre-COVID, being a nurse was challenging. It's a very challenging profession to be in. You have to constantly learn and adapt and know how to handle situations while also being strong for other people, while trying to be strong for yourself.
Being a nurse before the pandemic was definitely, it's still beautiful now, don't get me wrong. It was way, way different. To begin with, the staffing was better, and just the way of life. I could see my colleagues' faces. The pressure is so much. Everyone is so stressed. Everyone is so tense. At work, the environment is so different now, unlike before.
My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak with you about our nation's unprecedented response to the coronavirus outbreak that started in China and is now spreading throughout the world. Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic.
In March of 2020, it was utter chaos because every day information was coming out, and every day it was changing.
This virus we've been hearing about, one case here and one case there, out of nowhere became a global pandemic.
You could just kind of start to put the pieces together and know that this is not contained to one place and there is a wave coming.
But we knew that we were going to be right there in front of it, with it, battling it.
And I really felt like we were preparing for a war.
There was a point where I'm sitting on my sofa at home in the living room, anxious to the point of I'm getting ready to either text or call my wife and say, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not okay.
So when COVID first came to the US, I was like, it's just a matter of time before it reaches LVH and the Lehigh Valley really in general. And I knew, working in a medical surgical ICU, even though I wasn't there full time, I still worked there. And I was scared because it was so unknown. No one knew anything about it.
I was very scared. I was very worried for my kids. They were so young. Now daycare shut down. So here I am with 3 kids, 3 and under, at home, can't go nowhere. My family can't even come and help me or my in-laws because there was a pandemic. We don't know what to expect.
During the first wave, we had shut down elective procedures, elective surgeries, and those nurses were redeployed to help us in the inpatient setting where we were getting hit with COVID the hardest.
Pennsylvania's health secretary says some hospitals around the state are running low or even out of ICU beds.
COVID-19 hospitalizations just topped 5,000 in Pennsylvania.
It was really scary. At that point, I had been an ICU nurse for 4.5 years. I've seen a lot, done a lot, but walking into, not knowing what could happen if any of us got COVID, or if I brought it home to my young boys. I had a 6-month-old and an almost 2-year-old. I remember that morning, leaving, and my husband just giving me a big hug and I gave my kids a big hug because I decided that in order to keep them safe, I was going to be separate from them. I stayed down in our guest room and pretty much only saw them on FaceTime.
Morale over time started to become very difficult to maintain because you were seeing the same, not only the same type of patient, but you were seeing the same issues, the same death, you knew that a high percentage of the patients that you were going to come in contact with were going to die.
The U.S. death toll from COVID-19 topped 100,000.
100,000 lives have now been lost to this virus.
You can be the strongest person, but still have those moments of weakness because we're human. Nurses are no different. We feel things just as our patients feel things. We feel things as family members feel things. We try to be that strong person that's there to help them get through things that that they shouldn't have to go through, but that they are.
Every dispatch was COVID, another COVID patient. It became the norm. It was an expectation. The not normal was somebody who did survive. And healthcare is not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be the other way around.
The first wave of an Ironman is the swim. It's also the shortest portion of the race. So even though an Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, it's going to be your shortest part of the day. I felt like the first wave of COVID for us was like that. We entered it, we dealt with it, then summer came along and things started to die down a little bit. The second wave was November of 2020 going into the winter of 2021.
So patients doing well during the pandemic, as we all know, was a rare case. By the time I was transporting them, they were on the cusp of death.
During COVID, nursing took a hit. The pressure, the workload became so much. I used to just be afraid to come to work.
We had an elderly couple that had been married for, I cannot remember now how many years, but it was a very long time. They both decided to remove everything and go comfort measures together. So we actually